I'm Samuel Miele,
I'm Scott Fishman,
and this is the Student of the 21st Century podcast,
where every single week we're going to talk about all the things that school didn't teach you.
Are you ready to graduate?
Tune in for a new episode every week.
We'll see you there. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Samuel Miele,
I'm Scott Fishman,
and this
is the Student of the 21st Century podcast. Sam, what are we talking about today?
So Becca has some notes for us, and this is actually a really important topic that we talk about a lot and we're always scared about because it is hard, especially hiring your first person, increasing your price, making a J curve into any area of your life. Scott, we're talking about J curves today.
J curves, just our favorite thing and what we love most as business owners. Why not be afraid? Because that's what we all are when we jump into a J curve.
And it's going to work, but you're a little bit scared to do that. Now, are we talking to the absolute startup, just started your business? Maybe not, but it's something for you to be aware of. We're more talking to people who are specifically struggling with the idea of hiring somebody. I think that's one of the most important J curves that you're going to have to make in your business if you are looking to get an actual company behind you and a team.
Yeah, and that is probably the hardest part about being a startup is at what point do you finally make that jump into the J curve that you need to make, but you're still super afraid of what actually is going to happen when you take the dive off the deep end and finally just do it, whether it's hiring a first person or making a big business decision, like, raising prices or not compromising on prices, which we know very well about. But, it's that fear of, okay, well, what comes with this? Do I lose clients? Am I going to be able to keep clients because I know my worth? Like every little thing is that infamous J curve that we're all just so afraid of, but we know we need to make it because otherwise our business just can't move forward.
Honestly, I remember when I hired my first person, I was petrified. Granted, it was, I did it where it was like, okay, I can give you $50 a week. Like you're going to like learning from me type of thing. They were my age. It wasn't like an actual, employee, right? I didn't actually hire an employee until 4 months ago.
It's funny though, because when we look at like that, for example, because we've all now gone through this process of hiring, firing, all that fun stuff, but you look at it and it's like, okay, it's going to be easier because I'm bringing somebody in that I know, but is it really easier when you bring in somebody that you know, or does it really make it harder?
Honestly, it makes it harder. Like shout out to Chad. We had Chad as our assistant, and he did a fantastic job. It was just, we had known each other for so long. The dynamic was different. It wasn't like necessarily like a boss-employee relationship. And I'm not saying that that's what you should have with your team, but there does need to be a level of like what you say in terms of like what needs to get done at this time, how it gets done. It should be listened to. And if it's not, then you have to reevaluate why that person is working with you. Because if they're not following direction and the other thing too is I say like contribute a lot of ideas. Well, with Chad, it just, we had been friends for so long. His heart was somewhere else. And shout out to him because he wanted to be more in the soccer industry, management side.
I don't blame him. I'd love to be in the soccer industry.
Especially, I know, Scott, you are a big soccer fanatic, but I think, the example I was trying to make was it's very hard to not feel comfortable or to feel comfortable hiring somebody you don't know right out the get-go. You want to hire the person that you know.
For sure. But, it's funny because it's also that J curve off the other end of being like, I know it's not working out the greatest because I know this person, but then you're looking at it and it's just another J curve of like, okay, but now if I get rid of this person that I know I work really well with them. I know that our relationship is great. And now I need to train somebody all over again, which is just another J curve in itself because you have to worry about all the stresses of orientation, paperwork, all that kind of stuff all over again from the get-go.
So we talk about standstills a lot in business, and you don't want to be at a standstill. And if you are, you can be if you want to, but as a company that's trying to grow, why would you want to be at a standstill? Can you tell us a little bit about why not making the J curve is a bad move and why it might be a good move?
You know what? It's funny because for some people, not making that jump may be okay, and they may not worry about not making that choice because they may be okay with the position that they're currently in. And so it really just comes down to, at least in my opinion, what your ambition for your company or whatever you're doing really is. I mean, if you get to a point where you're comfortable with where your business is at, that's fine. You don't have to necessarily make the jump because if you're say I'm a one-man show, I don't want anybody else, I don't want to add this, I don't want to add this, what I'm doing is working. Will you succeed in the long run? I don't know, but some people may not even want to make that jump. But when we look at it, we have this conversation all the time of like, we want bigger, 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 bigger. It's just the type of people that we are is constantly growing. And the only way to do that is to put ourselves in uncomfortable positions.
If you find you're a person that always likes to be doing more, being better, you're going to have to make these J curves eventually. You're going to have to make these big business decisions, whether they be hiring somebody. We just say hiring somebody because that's, I think, one of the main ones. Another one might be, depends how far you get in your business, but bringing somebody in as a partner, bringing in somebody to or evaluating how much your business is worth. That's a big one. Another J curve might be, getting funding. Yeah. That's a big one. And actually sometimes in some bigger companies, getting funding is the first jump you have to make. Can we talk a little bit about, what some of the J curves might be specifically other than just hiring somebody? Because people need to feel like it's okay. Yeah. I'm not hiring somebody, but I feel like this might be the biggest decision I've ever made. So let's relate to the audience a little bit.
Yeah. From our perspective, and Becca, who's behind the cameras today, but we have this conversation all the time of, how can we add to our business? And whether it's hiring somebody or a totally different direction of lead pillars and what can we be doing to grow and do bigger things and bring in more transactions, build more relationships, like how can we constantly be adding to those lead pillars? What can we do? How many, can we engage with more people, whether it's social media or online lead gen or video or content, like all that stuff. There's so many things that go into it, and we can run all the numbers that we want of like, oh, maybe our projection will be here, our ROI will be this. But at the end of the day, it's still making that leap of, is this going to work?
You just have to do it.
You have to just trust yourself that you're going to make it work. And that's why you're in that position.
Now, I would say we've been talking about how hard they are, but let's talk about, why do you want to make these? But more importantly, how do you make these? So some of the tips that I have that I did, and when Scott comes to me with, Sam, I want to bring this person in, or, I want to do this, and it's a lot of money to spend in a month, but I think it's worth it. One of the things I say is, let's break down the positives and let's break down the negatives. So make a pros and cons list and then weigh those. Figure out what's important to you. What is the potential positive and the potential negative if you did it? And what are the potential positives and potential negatives if you didn't do it? The other important thing is, Scott, we were talking about this, you need to have a 10-year goal. You always need to be striving towards something more. If you're not, you're at a standstill. Now, sometimes that's okay. If you feel like you want to be at a standstill, that's fine. But maybe this isn't the podcast for you because we're trying to make our businesses grow. And this is just us shedding light on that in our experiences in the past and what we are experiencing now. So really, if you can weigh the pros and cons list, and then on top of that, you can say, okay, what is the benefit to doing it? And what's the negatives to doing it? And what's the benefits to not doing it and the negatives to not doing it? One of the things you want to weigh is when you, let's say, hire somebody, your overhead gets higher.
Yeah.
But the benefit is one day, hopefully you can make some money and not have to do anything. Scott, tell us, what's the benefits and negatives to not doing it?
Well, the benefit to not doing it is you have less overhead, as you just mentioned. And you're going to, because it's a pro and a con. It's money straight out of your pocket. But how valuable is your time? And I think that's ultimately how we look at things. And as you briefly talked about, I look at everything in 10 years. Where do I want to be in 10 years? And how does this help me get there? And will it help me get there? And, maybe it's going to cost me more money now. Maybe it's going to cost me less money now. And that's why it's scary. It could be scary because it's going to cost me less, but it's going to bring in less. So it's ultimately, where do I want to be in 10 years? How does this help me get there? And is it worth it for my time? Do I see the value in it? And how do I want to build? And those are all the things that I factor in when I'm looking at it, aside from the money standpoint, because it is tough. Like hiring somebody, for example, is money straight out of your pocket.
Yeah.
For us, if we pull in a new lead pillar and we start running Facebook ads, for example, that could be $500, $600, $700, $1,000 a month just straight out of your pocket that you don't know if you're going to get back. And you hope you are.
It's an investment. And I think it might help if you really want to make the jump to do something like a big business decision. And really, instead of saying J curves, we could just say, making bigger and better business decisions all around.
Progressing.
Yeah. What I would say is try to dissect what you want to do and then say, well, if I did it, what's the worst that could happen?
Right.
And I remember doing that when I was thinking, what's the worst that could happen if it doesn't work? And unfortunately, maybe if it's hiring somebody, they lose their job.
Right.
Right. One of the things is you have to trust the self-confidence in yourself to know that you can make sure it works. I remember when I hired somebody, it was like, and like full time, I realized I had to literally have a fire under my butt to just keep going and to work harder and make more money at the end of the day. Because if the money didn't come in by the end of the month and I have to pay those wages, if I can't afford that, there's another person on the line. And quite honestly, having now 3 people that I pay hourly and, on a daily basis, every single day, it puts that fire under your butt to make sure that you get the job done, you get it done well, and you make sure they get the job done well so everybody can have a take-home amount of money and hopefully grow within the business as I'm looking at now is how do we make people grow and want a long-term career, right? That's a whole other J curve within itself.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't even touch on cash flow. I mean, that could be a whole episode on its own, but making J curves into your pricing, figuring out what's your hourly cost. What do you need to make? What are your margins on each client, on each video, on each home?
Yeah, well, me and Becca have this conversation all the time of like, it's great to bring people in, and then how do we keep them? Like, it's great we took that J curve and we've trained this person, spent 6 months training them, and everything is going great. But like, if we don't career path it for them, they're going to leave.
And I don't blame anybody because, quite honestly, you can't expect somebody to stay with you. Like, even if it's, okay, let's say you pay somebody $30, $40 an hour. I don't think they're going to stay with you for the rest of their lives for the next 40 years if they don't see any other added benefits to staying there for that long. You have to build it up.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
So, I mean, obviously I want to pay the people that are in our business. Obviously I want to pay them as much as I possibly can, but you have to do what's smart for the business.
Right.
So if you can, like you said, career path it. I mean, Scott, how would you go about career pathing it?
Yeah, it's tough. And I mean, the way we look at it is everything comes back to our 10-year goal. So we look at it as, here's our personal 10-year goal, but here's the business 10-year goal. And how can we fit these people into that? Where do they fit in? Do they fit in? How can we make them fit in and move them around within the business to make them feel as though they are valued? Because we do value everybody that's within our businesses. And that's a task in itself, is trying to career path it all the way through instead of just feeling like you're at a standstill, because nobody really wants to feel like they're at a standstill.
And I was talking to a wise individual. When you are, and I think it's okay that we're talking about hiring people, but you have to ask them, do you want a floor? Because if they want a floor, they're going to have a ceiling. Ask them, do you not want a floor? But understand you don't have a ceiling, right? So with that said, allow them to make the decision and figure out from there what you can do.
Yeah, and what the business allows.
What the business allows, of course. And sometimes when it means not having a ceiling, you can offer a commission or offer, a percentage of something, but it's not guaranteed ever. Business is never guaranteed.
Yeah, no, for sure. So at 18, like you are, what would you say other than hiring has been the biggest J curve within the business? Because I know you've been through your fair share of ups, downs, and in-betweens.
I mean, honestly, from a personal side, I would say realizing who you need to stay friends with and realizing who you shouldn't stay friends with. I think that's a big one. And that's something that people start out right away with having struggles with.
Yeah.
We can talk about hiring people. I mean, unless you're, once you start bringing in 5 figures a month, then maybe you think about hiring somebody. But realistically, that's a long ways away for a lot of people in a startup business. I think for me, the hardest part was understanding at what point do I need to not listen to anybody? And then at what point do I need to cut them out?
Yeah.
And even recently making decisions to cut people out of my life, it's kind of sad, but also I've noticed a big difference in how I felt emotionally, and it's been more positive. And I mean, we talk about this off camera, but when you realize that a lot of the people in your life, because this is a lot of people, especially at a young age, a lot of the people in your life shouldn't be there, but you just feel like you have to hold on to them, and you are indecisive in whether or not your relationship is valuable with them in any way, shape, or form, then quite honestly, why do you have them in your life?
Right. Well, it's true, because as you get older, one of the things that like we've figured out is that, you know, it's great to have the friends from high school, but it's so hard to have the friends from high school that have the same ambitions. And that's a whole J curve in itself of
It's finding
realizing
them.
that
Oh, yeah.
and your whole social dynamic changing and being so terrified of it, because these are people you grew up with. You've known your whole life. You saw them every day, Monday to Friday. And now it's like, okay, I'm jumping off a cliff into that J curve to be like, great. Now I feel like I'm going to have no friends and I don't know what's going to happen with my business. So it's that fear all the way around, but we've all been there. At the end of the day, we're all in the same boat. And as business owners and startups, essentially, we all feel the same way. Like, hey, if we want our business to grow and to succeed, unfortunately, there's people around that don't view their life and their business the same way that we do.
And that's why you might want to be friends with older people, more mature people. And it's also crucial if you are in a relationship, like a romantic relationship with somebody, they need to have the same motivations as you do, because if they don't, they're going to bring you down with them. You're going to be on a Friday night and, you know, they're going to want to go out on date night, but they realize that you're in a startup, right? If you can have somebody who pushes you as hard as you push yourself, if not harder, to work towards your dreams and set aside the Friday night date nights, maybe 2 years down the line, and just sacrifice 2 years of your life so you can have financial freedom for the rest of your life.
Yep.
Why wouldn't you want somebody like that?
Even just the potential of financial freedom.
Exactly. And the motivation. You have to find people that motivate you and that encourage you to do bigger and do better, but also celebrate your wins with you. On that note, is there anything else that we wanted to touch on for this episode?
I think that pretty much wraps it up. J-curves are fun. That's pretty
They
much
are fun.
Don't
you know
be
what?
terrified by everything we just said, because they are fun.
My last piece of advice that I will give is any sort of J-curve you make will never be bad. You will always learn from it, and you will always say, well, I tried that. I won't do it again. If it doesn't work out. If it does work out, you got everything you ever wanted and that you dreamed of. So with that said, I hope that motivates you and encourages you to make those jumps, or encourages you to reach out to us. Feel free to ask us any questions.
Yeah.
You can check us out on Instagram, samuel.miele, or Scott
Fishman_realtor.
of course, real estate agent.
Has to be in there.
Has to be in there. Everybody, thank you for listening and watching, and we hope to see you in the next episode. Cheers.
Yeah. Halo Productions on the edit. He's going to hear that too.
Hello.
He's like ASMR. That needs to make it in the podcast too. I'm Scott Fishman.
And this, what else do I say?
You say in this, and I say is Student 21st Century Podcast. Oh no, I don't. Another flawless session in the Vision Lux Studios. Except Kevin. He can afford Kevin.
Yeah.
I think we're good.